Welcome, folks. I'm your host, Devahntau Colonel, and I do know that today we are actually, for the first time ever, starting a little bit early. Oh my goodness.
That's good, right? Early's good.
Early, so good.
Better than late.
Better than late. And we've got a cool episode here for you guys. We haven't had someone in the uh, we haven't had a lot of guests on that speak from the purview of business. It's going to be our next guest here that I'm about to introduce, Taryn, that we had on a little bit ago, and then our first guest that we had on, Tony. So I'm excited about this one, and I'm excited to get it ripping and roaring for you guys. So let me go ahead and start that off, you guys. We have with us today for the first time ever a Mr. Jay Moore with us.
Hello, hello. I almost said welcome. Welcome. I'm welcome and glad to be here.
Welcomes and hellos are always good. So, as we get started in this, you guys, I want to start by saying that I am extremely appreciative of the time that you were able to take out. I know
Of
that
course.
in a working week to be able to take time out to come meet with someone, even the rescheduling that I did with you last minute, I don't like when people do that. So I am so appreciative of your flexibility that you had to be able to make that
No
work.
problem. No problem. My
Uh,
pleasure.
and so, you guys, that's why I'm excited about this right here because he was still willing to do it even after the last minute
It worked
reschedule.
out better for me today. So you did me a favor. All
Really?
good, yeah.
Oh, perfect.
Yesterday got busier, today got lighter. So either way, I would have been here. So happy to be
Hey,
here.
things working out perfectly. So in this episode, you guys, like I mentioned before, we're going to be covering things from the standpoint of business. We're going to look at, on this show, our goal is in part to look at the progression of men from the perspective of whether they're a middle school boy contemplating what they want to do in life, all the way to the point where they are maybe a CEO, tenured for 15, 20 years, and everything that comes in between. And that's part of why I'm so excited with this episode is because Mr. Jay Moore here is well gifted throughout the span of his career, and will have a plethora of positions and roles to be able to tell us about. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get into the story of Jay Moore.
All right. Starting from the beginning. So I'm a Californian, born and raised in California. I realize I've now lived in Florida as long as I lived in California. So I'm a
Hot dog.
Califloridian, if that's a thing.
Mhm.
I don't know if that's really a thing, but I'm a Califloridian at this
It's becoming
point.
more popular.
I have to claim it, right? Like I can't be a Californian if I've lived here longer. So I was born in the Central Coast, San Luis Obispo, Cascadero. My dad went to Cal Poly, and that's a little coastal town, beautiful part of kind of Southern California, but the northern part of Southern California. And we quickly moved up to Lake Tahoe. So
Okay.
throughout my life, the mountains have always been a place where I visit often. Probably going back to when I was just a little guy, playing in the snow and living in Lake Tahoe. We moved around a little bit, and I ended up in Northern California, in the wine country. So towns like Sonoma and then Ukiah. So if you buy California wines, you probably know Santa Barbara and Ukiah and Sonoma, Napa. These are the towns I lived in. So.
Okay. So that area of California there, and then Sonoma, Manapa, all these Hawaiian sounding pieces. Okay. So continue.
Yeah, and then I ended up going to school at UC Santa Barbara, so University of California, Santa Barbara, which is part of the UC system. So you may not know it as well as Cal Berkeley or UCLA, but same line. But the most beautiful campus, and just if I recommend any school in the world, if you can get in, it's tough anymore. I couldn't get in anymore. None of my friends could get in anymore, but it was a little easier back then. And so I went to school at UCSB and right on the coast, beautiful campus, amazing place. And I majored in communication studies. I always thought I would work in advertising and marketing and some creative field, and that would seem like the right major and the right school, and that's where I was.
Okay, okay. And so you got your entire your whole degree from that, graduated in that?
Yeah, yeah, that was I was there 4 years. I was one of those guys that I wasn't gonna waste a dollar. I pretty much put myself through school.
Smart man.
So I hear people changing majors or adding majors or taking a 5th year. I was like, my freshman year, I picked every class pretty much that I was gonna take for 4 years, and I took those classes. I was,
Mm,
like, on the dot, like, nothing extra. I took 1 acting class and 1 little I took Japanese, it was a requirement. I took the it was a gr I really hit all the boxes, which I think was fine.
mhm,
Maybe after a couple of years, it's good to reevaluate what you've learned and shift a little bit,
mm.
but I was locked in and there for 4 years and got the bachelor's degree, and, um, then I was still living in Santa Barbara, and my first weird little side turn, it's like senior year, wasn't sure what I was gonna do, didn't have a job, thought about grad school maybe, and then I overheard my friend Kevin, mention to my friend Tom that they were gonna go live in Hawaii for a little bit. And Kevin's
Oh.
grandma and grandpa lived in, a little town next to Honolulu, and I was like, "Is there room for one more?" Like, I don't really have a plan, and Hawaii sounds dope, so, and he was like, "Well, you and Tom would share a room." I'm like, "Tom?" He's like, "Sure." So 3 recent college grads living in grandma's house. We rented a crappy little car that had no air conditioning, and one window didn't roll all the way up, and the radio
That's the best
only
way to
had
start, man.
AM, and it was like, and we weren't thinking about working. We were just taking a few months just to live there, and I thought it would be just a vacation, kind of, unwind from college kind of a deal. Some people go to Europe and backpack. We went to Hawaii and sat around the beach.
Hey, yo.
And then I woke up one day and Kevin was going to grad school to get an MBA. Tom was going to grad school to get his teaching credential. And I was like, "You guys are leaving me, man. Why are you leaving me?" And I couldn't live at grandma's house by myself,
Mm.
as sweet as she was. So I looked in the want ads. Now, you young people may not know this, but before the internet, before phones, um, and this is in 1990, 1995. So I graduated high school in 91, college in 95.
Ah, that's when I was born, 95.
Yeah, there you go. So when you were just opening your eyes, I was living in Hawaii, and I opened up the want ads. So this is an actual newspaper. You've seen them, kids. Open up the newspaper. In the back, there were actually the want ads. Like that's how you would find a job, the classifieds. And this is where you would sell a car, find an apartment, and I just scrolled down the jobs. It's like, what what am I qualified for? As this 21-year-old kid, and I found something that was like, "Do you like sports? Are you good with people? Learn my business." And it turned out it was selling life insurance. Never had an idea about this. Walked in, it was like the first offer I had or first callback. And so I walked into this office. It's all these like laid back, either Hawaiians or like, you know, mainlanders who'd moved to Hawaii,
Mhm.
wearing Hawaiian shirts and khakis and dress shoes,
Oh, wow.
selling life insurance. No salary, just if you sold something, you made some money. And that was my, I guess, first real job.
Mm.
I'd worked a lot through school. In high school, I'd worked, but that was my first post college job.
Hot dog.
I,
It's
I haven't I haven't had a sales job since.
relatable. That reminds me of everybody that graduated high school in the Tampa area, probably some in the Orlando area too. Um, everyone, all it was like a month later, every high school graduate got an email or something in the mail from a company called Cutco. If you're familiar with them, they have these knives and their demonstrations like they're gonna
Yeah.
cut a penny, and if you
One of my son's friends was try to sell us those knives.
Oh,
I know all about those
man.
knives. Yeah, like cutting the hairs off his arm. Look how
Yes,
nice sharp that
sir.
is. This is a little more involved. Wasn't quite door to door.
Mhm.
We were working with the union members and going in
Mm.
and setting up their insurance policies, which is actually a very important profession and very important part of thing.
Mhm.
Part of life is insurance and you know death benefits and all these heavy
Mhm.
subjects. It just wasn't quite for me. I did it long enough, made enough money to like stay there for 6 more months,
Mhm.
and then I woke up on a Tuesday and I left the island on a Wednesday. I was like,
Hot
I'm done. I had a
dog.
roommate. was a little bit of an older guy I worked with, and I was like, "Man, I'm out of here." And he's like, "All right, see ya."
Mm.
And I went back to my parents had moved to Oregon, so I went up to Oregon and lived there for a little while. And I was like, "I got to get back to Santa Barbara." Literally took a hippie bus from from Salem all the way down, an overnight bus with a stop at like a commune, back to Santa Barbara, and I crashed on my buddy's couch and looked for my next job.
Hot dog. So once you got to so you started first job, sales job,
Yeah.
said, all right, I'm done. 6 months later, went over. And then once you get over to the couch of your buddy,
Yeah.
what's the next phase for you?
So it was interesting. Again, I don't remember how I found this job. It was probably the want ads again. But I started working with kids in an after school program, and they made me the sports director.
And
So
you started doing that just as a volunteer?
no, this was paid. It
Okay,
was a paid
okay.
job, but it wasn't at a school. It was like a aftercare daycare facility that had day camps and summer
Mm.
camps, and um, a few kids during the day and then a bunch of kids after school.
Hmm.
And just to back up a little bit, when I was at UCSB, I worked for the intramural program. So
Oh.
students playing against students in sports. Um, I was in charge of like the big 5K charity run for students, put on a lot of activities in the rec center. So I'd worked in sports a little bit. I kind of
Hmm.
got a little taste of it in
Mm.
the recreation side. And so this was kind of the next job in sports where I was the sports director for this camp. So I
Mm.
was putting together, kickball games and field trips and things.
Okay.
But again, it's kind of on the start of the arc. My next job, I wasn't there that long. It was kind of a hourly position, not even full time
Mm.
quite, but it was paying the bills. When you have no bills, it's easy to pay the bills.
Right.
That might be a quote. When you have more bills, it's harder to pay the bills.
Wisdom.
Um, and yeah, those are facts. The So then I got another job. I was assistant manager of a sporting goods store,
Okay.
which was kind of cool in Santa Barbara. We had celebrities coming in, and rich folks didn't know how to pick out a baseball mitt for their kid, and so it was pretty good job. It was retail. I mean, it was a sporting goods store,
Hmm.
called Big Five. It's part of a big chain in California, Nevada. Out here we don't see them, but
Yeah.
um,
I think I remember seeing that. I lived in Vegas for a while.
yeah,
I
yeah.
think I
I think
remember
they're out in
seeing.
Vegas. Yeah,
Yeah.
Big Five. But it was cool. It's sports. One day you're stringing tennis rackets, and again, I really enjoyed like helping kids pick out their first pair of cleats, and it was
Mm.
and even though in college it was rec sports, and then with the kids it was like kickball games. Now this is like selling sports equipment. I started realizing that I'd had this passion
Mhm.
for working in sports.
Mm.
And so it was a little bit of an inflection point. I wasn't gonna, work every Sunday afternoon selling shoes. It's like I
Right.
wasn't quite working in sports, and my eyes hadn't been open to what it meant to have a sports career. I thought there were players and coaches and
Mhm.
referees. Like maybe I had a notion that there's like some kind of a physical trainer. Um, but I had a marketing background in school, and that's what I thought I was going to do.
Mhm.
I certainly wasn't going to be a player or a coach, didn't have that experience or size or whatever else.
Hear that.
And so I kind of researched like what jobs can you do in sports? I was like, oh, every sports team has marketing, every brand has a sports marketing division. Um, and I kind of just self-discovered that that was an option at that point.
Mm.
Um, Without it really much guidance. I didn't have like a mentor. I didn't have I never went into the on campus and just like asked them for some guidance.
Mhm.
But I just felt for whatever reason, and this is another thing. Back in those days, um, I should tell you, I'm 50 years old. So just for like reference point, I've hit the midpoint of my life, I think. So
Wow.
right now we're
Looking
covering
great, man. Looking great.
right now we're covering Q1, that like 0 to 25, and then it's like then we'll go 25 to 50, and I'll come back every 25 years and we'll catch up.
Love
Um,
it.
so just to kind of things have changed a little bit, but and back then I didn't know a lot of people. It didn't seem like most people went to grad school.
Mhm.
Like graduate school seemed like you were going to be a professor, or like a specific thing, like you were going to be a teacher and needed a credential,
Mm.
or a doctor, lawyer. So I kind of had to dig into understanding what would grad school look like for sports management, which was not a thing. And there were
Mhm.
two schools that had it. Um, and I applied to both of them and kind of interviewed and decided to go to grad school. And the one that gave me the best deal, I was kind of fitting my own bill here, footing my own
Mhm.
bill. So I wanted to, even with out of state tuition, grad school, I was like, well, who can
Yeah.
give me like some help or whatever.
Mhm.
And I ended up at Florida State.
Okay.
Go Knowles. So um right around 97, I got in my truck and drove cross country, and I literally pulled up to Florida State, and I was like, so where's the beach? Like I just thought like if you move to Florida, you're probably like by the
Everybody's
beach.
thinking it,
Yeah, I'm like, oh,
man.
hey, you guys want to go to the beach? They're like, yeah, it's like hour and a half away. If you want to go to like, Boynton Beach or what's like Destin or whatever,
Mhm.
Panama
Cocoa or
City or whatever. Well,
yeah.
from Tallahassee, it's
Oh, okay.
like,
Yeah, yeah,
I was
yeah.
like, this is looks like Georgia. Like it's all trees and hills. Like, it just shows you how little shows you how little information was available. I couldn't
Mm,
just pull up a website and learn about it.
mm,
Couldn't pull up Google Maps. You kind of just
right.
word of mouth, and you looked in some book of colleges. And
Yeah.
my stepmom had gone to Florida State, and my aunt, and so I had a little connection there. I
Mhm.
wasn't totally blind moving across the country. I knew a little bit about it, but I really honestly thought it was like probably, near the beach or on the Atlantic. I was like never looked at a map. I'm like, oh, we're way up here. It gets
Hot
cold.
dog.
Just no beach. So
That's part of the surprise point. People don't know it gets very cold up around that Panama City, Tallahassee.
yeah,
Oh man,
it
it
gets
is frigid
and
too. Like,
that humid 35 with clear
oh my
skies. It
goodness.
bites. It's
I'll tell
cold.
you what, my brothers moved to North Dakota. I was up
Ooh,
there with them, 15-degree weather. But if there's no wind, it feels like 74 here.
yeah,
It's
because it's
fine.
dry.
Yeah.
You're in the sun, it's okay. You get in the
Mhm.
shade, it's cold. Like that's how when I lived in Lake Tahoe, and I still go to Tahoe quite a bit. You hike and you outside, and it's not that cold. Like you
Right?
don't feel it.
Yeah.
And
Only
you put on a
you.
sweatshirt and you're fine. Here it's like coldest I've ever been is watching a soccer game in bleachers, like in
Oh
December. Like
yeah.
it's windy and
Right,
it's
you're just getting all that funneled wind and whatnot. Oh my
yep,
goodness. So before we continue on, there was a part where you had mentioned how your friends had one had gone off to get his MBA,
yep,
the other one had gone on to continue in his education as well, and that left you trying to be just having to figure out like, okay, well, my friends are out, they're doing this thing, so I got to do something now.
yeah,
Um, and that just makes me think of the idea that comes to mind where everyone says that you are the sum of the 4 or 5 people that you spend your time the most with.
yeah.
So, do you think that your friends making the decision to do those things directly affected your thought of going to that place as well? And would that have looked different if they decided to do other things, like, let's say, going into the workforce immediately?
Yeah, it's a great question and a really good point. Even going back to high school, like 2 or 3 of my closest friends, we visited colleges together.
Mhm.
Our dads would take turns driving us down to San Diego and
Mm.
driving us to Cal Poly, and we kinda decided together to go to UCSB. So even back then, it was kinda like
Oh.
we kinda went with and a couple friends went, somewhere else,
Mhm.
but there were 4 of us, you know, in lockstep, went to school together, and then, um, different group of guys that relationships I'd built in college, we went to Hawaii together.
Hot
So
dog.
I guess, when they went off to college, I definitely 'cause I didn't immediately go to grad school, but I certainly knew that was an option,
Mhm.
right? Like, that's what I tell my nieces and nephews or people that I meet kind of outside of my immediate circle. Like, sometimes people just don't know what else is out there.
Mhm.
It seems like, if everybody else is going to work at the sawmill, it seems like what I should do too.
Mhm.
If everybody else I know is going to the army, then it's a great option. Maybe that's what I should do.
Mhm.
So I definitely think that, I didn't want to follow either one to what they were studying or
Right.
even where they were moving to.
Mhm.
One went to LA, one was in San Jose. But it definitely probably did influence it like, oh, that's a good option. It
Yeah.
also kind of, I think my older son went to grad school and he's now in law school.
Ah.
And the grad school part was kind of like delaying the decision. It's like his grad school year, I kind of call it his COVID year. He was at University
Oh.
of Florida, finished his fourth year, was kind of in that COVID time.
Mhm.
Football season was weird and you couldn't go to the games. And um, so that he kind of was like, I don't know, I felt he kind of owed himself that fourth year, one more year in
Yeah.
Gainesville. And so he got a master's in 1 year. Um, and no regrets. I think he really learned something.
Mhm.
He kind of shrugged his shoulder, like, "Yeah, I didn't necessarily need that master's, or it wasn't
Mm.
like maybe the right subject." It was kind of it worked out great. And now he's in law
Mhm.
school. So for me, I also feel a little bit of that. Was I delaying? Was I
Mhm.
delaying the next step? Like maybe I can take out some
Mm.
loans and still live this college life and still kind of figure things out because I
Interesting.
didn't have like a with my degree, I didn't have that like skill set that was recruited heavily. I wasn't like an engineer,
Mhm. Right.
or I'm a game developer, and you're like, okay, now I'm going to go find a studio and develop
Mhm.
games, or you know,
Nothing
uh,
that had kinda like, I guess they would call them hard skills, where it's like you
yeah,
plug into
yep,
something and you know the mechanisms, and so boom, you're ready to hit it.
yep,
It was a lot of, maybe, like, knowledge and, like, kinda softer skills?
yep. It's a
That makes
great
sense.
great way to put it. Yeah, it's with communications and marketing today.
Mhm.
Um, there's lots of very tactical, learning about Google Ads, learning about digital
Absolutely.
marketing, social media. Like there's a lot more of a profession that's a digital marketer,
Yes.
while you're also learning more of the skills I learned, the softer skills like branding and
Mhm.
persuasion and communication tactics and things.
Yeah.
So it was the other thing about a UC, or University of California. The UCs tend to be research institutions,
Mm.
and the CSUs, California State Universities, tend to be more, like you said, like there's teaching skills.
Mhm.
So if you want to be a teacher, you tend to go here. If you want to be a professor or researcher, you go here.
Mhm.
And so a lot of my professors, I was involved in studies and involved in um,
Mm.
doing research, as opposed to like hard, like this is go get an internship and go work at an ad agency. Nobody once told me go intern at an ad agency.
That's
Like I
crazy.
realized kind of later, it was like I wonder why I didn't end up in advertising. It's like because I never went and got a job or an internship at
Mhm.
an agency, which is like kind of what you're supposed to do.
Ah, dog,
And
yeah.
so it was again a lack of kind of learning from counselors on campus or people
Mhm.
in the field. I never had that mentor that kind of pulled me into that
And
industry.
that perfectly segues into the next note that I had
Yeah.
taken. You had mentioned that you didn't have these other resources that you kinda use, so I wanted to ask you, what resources would you have used to better prepare yourself for the market and some things that maybe you identify today in schools that people are not taking advantage of?
Yeah, I honestly think, depending on what school you're at, they're really good on campus, uh, career centers and
Mhm.
advisors. And sometimes the advisors, it's hard to get an appointment and they're all backed up and it feels like you're just talking to another kid. And I've heard from my son, sometimes the experience wasn't great, but I wouldn't give up on that. I really think that there are people on campus. If you just look at the schools as a business, these major universities, they make more money by how successful the students are, the graduates,
Yeah.
the alumni. They
Mhm.
want you to donate money back. They want you to donate time back. They want you to come back for football games, all those things. But they really are both, you know, empathetically and kind of operationally designed to help you find those jobs.
Mhm.
So take advantage of all those free resources that you or your parents have paid for.
Yeah.
Like go in there. Like, and even if you go in and talk to a kid one time and you don't get great advice, then schedule a meeting with somebody else. But I think that's one thing I never did. I don't remember ever walking into an office on campus
Mm.
other than like maybe the bursar to like pay my tuition. Um, so that's big. And then of course just mentorship and internships.
Mm.
Uh it's everybody wants free help. Like every company, every
Yeah.
agency, everybody has some level of internship or even just informational interview. Like, hey, can I shadow you for an afternoon? Like all those things. People will do it. You got to find those people.
Yeah.
So whether it's being on LinkedIn or networking, but
Mhm.
um, yeah, I didn't know anybody that had the job that I thought I wanted, so I never talked to anybody about how to get that job.
That makes sense, yeah. It's, like it makes me think of in the college years, I had several friends that were doing mechanical engineering and they would all travel in the same circles, attend the same parties, study groups, and all that. And when one of them got an intern, boom, he was passing that info to everybody. And
Yeah.
then as soon as the first person got a job, the next person was like, oh, yeah, I'll be on the lookout for that company. Or, oh, this company is working with that company. You can maybe
Yeah.
try both of them. And so, yeah, having that kind of, I guess, the networking skills while you're in college. Do you feel like you utilized your networking to its highest potential in the college landscape? Some people say, especially in a school like Full Sail, for example, that the networking is essentially half the value of what you're
Mhm.
getting in addition to all the other things that you learn.
Yeah, it's a really, really good point. So, I went to grad school at Florida State. I studied sports management, and a kid I sat by in class had done an internship with the Orlando Magic.
Mm. Oh,
And then
wow.
I asked him like, "Hey, can you make a call?" And I got an internship with the Orlando Magic. So there's
Hot
no
dog.
it seems like how does a California kid living in Tallahassee even think about Orlando? It was purely that my master's required an internship. So I
Hmm.
was kind of already motivated or lit up to I had to find one somewhere.
Yeah.
Um, and I had worked in the so the way that I got some money for school um, was I worked in the athletic department.
Mm.
So I actually ended up working with the women's basketball team as the head manager. So I
Mm.
traveled with the Florida State basketball team, and that paid my tuition. And then I also earned a fellowship based on my grades and things. So I actually did very well to like get through school without having a lot of loans.
Excellent.
But
Yeah.
most importantly, like the thing that got me the job, well, the internship
Mhm.
at the Orlando Magic was that one conversation I had like after class with the kid sitting by me.
Yeah.
And he had kinda gone backwards. He did an internship first and then went to grad school, so same idea. He
Huh.
kinda paid it forward,
Yeah.
um, yeah. Another thing interesting about networking
Mhm.
is when I was in school, at UCSB, I was not part of the Greek system, and I actually kinda turned my nose a little bit to it.
Mm.
Those are the rich kids or something.
Right.
Um, and and so when my son went to Florida and he pledged and went in the Greek system, I kind of had, I knew he's going to party too much and this and that.
Mm.
But it turns out like it's a really valuable brotherhood and networking. Like
Yeah.
he's made amazing relationships that he will keep for his whole life through that
Yeah.
system. So I don't think that's the only one, but I would just say involvement in
Mhm.
campus clubs and organizations.
Mhm.
Greek is just one of those.
Yeah.
So it might be, there's clubs based on major, clubs based on religion, clubs
Mhm.
based on international students. There's organizations based on causes. But I think that networking in college super valuable. Like can't
Yeah.
underestimate. Like you never know the kid next to you in class is a senator's son, and this one over here, parents are lawyers, and this one has traveled to this place you've never been. So,
Mhm.
um, yeah, I kinda stuck with my friends from high school, and we all lived together with a bunch of other kids who like to hang out, and we're still best friends. We just went on a trip to Roatan together. I mean, like,
Oh,
we've
awesome.
stuck it out, but none of them have ever gotten me a job or
Yeah.
each other. Like, we all
Mhm.
just kind of are friends doing different things. So, in undergrad, I didn't leverage the network. In grad school, I guess I did.
Mm. Hey, as long as somewhere in there you're able to, connect the dots at some point and
Yep.
leverage it. That's good. So, and I know I had kind of stopped you. You had talked about, I believe you had gone into being the assistant manager. Were you a little bit further than that, or I think you were getting to the next space after your assistant manager position?
Are we talking about yeah, back in Santa Barbara, yeah, the last job I had in Santa Barbara was at the sporting goods store.
Hmm.
And I realized, okay, I like sports. I'd done a little bit in college with sports. I realized there's some jobs outside of playing. So let's go, I'll go to grad school
Hmm.
and major in sports management. So this was like a really good way to do it. And then I got the assistantship and worked at Florida State
Hmm.
in the athletic program. And then the next job I had was the internship with the Orlando Magic. So
Awesome. Awesome. And then, so you were able to take that and get, I guess, all the great experience that you were able to get working with athletes and coaches and whoever you had to interact with. So what were some hard skills that you would say that you learned and developed there, and then some soft skills that you learned there?
Yeah. I think it was a lot of it's resume building, honestly, right?
Mhm.
Like, it helped me get an internship. Like every internship helps you get the next internship. Like you almost
Mhm.
need a few of those to help you get the job.
Mhm.
And so I think the biggest thing that working at Florida State with the basketball team got me was honestly, um, just putting it on my resume and having a reference from the head coach. Sue Samra was a first year head coach and really became a big supporter and mentor to me. Um, the skills I learned were like wiping up sweat and like washing dirty uniforms. I mean, I did more on the court, like helping with drills and stuff too, and traveling and things. So it was a I was not learning any marketing skills,
Mhm.
but just being in the athletic department on a daily basis. It's Bobby Bowden walking around. This is Florida State. This is
Mhm.
a really good place to open your eyes to working in sports because it's one of the big schools with every sport.
Yeah.
Football's huge, basketball's huge, baseball, the women's softball team, the women's soccer team, four-time national champions. Like so, like being at the time that they didn't have a team when I was there. Now they've won championships. But it's
Yeah.
like just if you're gonna go, if you want to study, go into sports, you probably don't want to go to a small school that doesn't have big programs.
Mhm.
Just being at a big school with all the Nike money coming in and the ESPN money and um, so I did learn a lot of just sort of how to operate and network and be around sports information department and compliance department and physical training. And so I
Mhm.
knew a lot more about the operations,
Mhm.
which translated when I got to the internship. I was probably, you know, the resume builder helped me get the internship. Now you're at the Magic with 20 other interns. How do you
Mm.
differentiate and separate?
Yeah.
I had maybe learned some work ethic and some knowledge of knowing my way around a sports organization.
Mhm.
And honestly, you know, so did a lot of the other interns, right? They'd probably come from similar majors or they had been athletes before. You
Mhm.
get that a lot in sports.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
what do I do at the end of my athletic career? Keep working in sports.
Mhm.
So I didn't have that on my resume. So being a manager was a way to like, I don't know, like managers, it's like, the towel boy, but I mean, it's like not a real professional job, but you're on the team. You travel in the ACC. I traveled on the plane and went everywhere and was really part of that. And you're on the bench or behind the bench during games and stuff. So, um, I think that's what I got, and lifelong relationships. Like I still talk to those coaches and those folks. So
Mm. And what do you so how do you for people that try and let's say they want to leverage the ability to come into these internships or networking opportunities, whether it's in college, there are some people that have like you seem like you are a natural when it comes to being able to um, talk to someone, like start from scratch and then just kind of make a connection, have it be lighthearted. But for those who nowadays are dealing in a way that they deal with mental anxiety so much, or just like a fear of being perceived strange or weird, how would you encourage that person to be able to take advantage and leverage these networking opportunities and to get out of their head?
yeah, it's a good question. I know it's important just to practice and just you don't expect to go from like I'm a little nervous in class to now I'm comfortable being a public speaker in front of an
Yeah.
arena, right? Like it's baby steps. It's little, so who are you comfortable talking with? Find your people in college, find your people in high school,
Hmm.
um, that you are comfortable with and open up to them and try to be more vocal.
How did you
Don't text, make a phone call.
Ooh, that's a
Don't
good one.
don't call, knock on a door, right? Like put yourself out there a little bit, a little more than you're comfortable. You don't have to overdo it,
Mhm.
but maybe that helps. And then, sorry, you're gonna ask a question. Or?
Yeah, so what did communication look like for you? Because, even to hear that you had a group of friends, you guys went to college together, and then from college, a group of friends from college to Hawaii, you always had this ability to keep in touch with some friends, and I think that now it seems like people so much there's so like between just working out of the country and all these jobs of constantly traveling around, all these travel systems that are going on. People are moving so much more now, and as it continues forward, I think there's more kind of um, transiting in order for work for the parents, which
Mhm.
affects the kids. So, how did you cultivate your communication skills? And what do you think your parents did to help that as you came into your school years?
Yeah, I kind of think back all the way to high school. I moved from one town to the next, um, the transition from junior high to high school. So I entered high school, I'm sorry, from elementary to junior high. So I entered back then it was sixth grade was our first year of middle school. And sorry, I messed that up. Seventh grade, not important, but seventh grade, it's an awkward age
Yeah.
to not have any friends. Um, and so even back then, I was pretty goofy. I was like super skinny, like little guy. So I kind of lean towards comedy. Like I have a visceral memory of in fifth grade, I had never really like spoken in class or been vocal. I remember I made one joke. Like it was the first time I made a joke and everybody in the class laughed, like including the teacher
Hmm.
and all the kids. And it was like, whoa, that felt so cool. Like it felt really good to get a laugh. And I think I've leaned on that, not like a comedian, but just finding some humor, starting with a joke. It's that's been my way of sort of breaking through that nervousness. And
Mm.
you hear that a lot about public speaking and whatever, right? If you can get a little laugh early, maybe a little self-effacing, just a little bit of a joke, a little something
Hmm.
to show that you're, kind of make it more casual in an
Mm.
interview, right? You can't tell a big joke to start an interview, but just a little bit of comedy,
Hmm.
for me, helped me kind of get over that early awkwardness.
Hmm.
And then maybe I went too far into it where like I realized if you're always joking, you're kind of putting it like he's a goofball,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
Like, and honestly, there was a point at which I realized I was maybe, making friends and I was comfortable with people,
Hmm.
but I didn't want to be just the goofy one, right?
Hmm.
Too silly. And there've been times in my life where I've had to kind of bounce between like, oh man, I need to, I'm in a leadership role now at work. Maybe I need to be
Hmm.
a little more serious and tone down the joking around.
Right.
Um, so I think just as a way of um, breaking the ice. I don't know how to teach that to someone. Like learn how to tell jokes. It's not even telling jokes. It's like just being open and honest about things. Like
Hmm.
I think that's part of it.
Yeah, being able to have some levity in there and maybe like just showing that, hey, this thing isn't like as tense as everyone feels it is. Because it sounded like even with the case of the seventh grade thing, it was like everyone might have been a little nervous, and you just kind of came out with like, "Hey, I don't take this thing that serious."
Yeah.
And sometimes people, yeah, they find that easygoing nature to a certain extent very relaxing, very comforting. Um,
I think it helps with teachers. Like I remember my high school teachers and even in university and like um making jokes that they laugh at too. We're like,
mm,
hey, this guy's fun in class.
mhm.
He's a good student. I was always a good student. I was like mostly a straight A guy. But I remember like teachers liking me. Like I remember that being important. And I think it helps. They give you a little extra help. They give you a little benefit of the doubt when your test is, your papers are late. Um, but it wasn't the guy who was the class clown who's disruptive.
Yeah.
So, again, my son tended to be the guy that maybe was super active. My older boy, I have a 24-year-old and a 9-year-old, and he might have gone too far into the like he was disruptive. So he was popular with the kids, but maybe turned the
Uh-huh.
teacher or the coach off a little bit. Not too much. But he now uses those skills. He's a great networker, and everybody loves him. Kind of guy.
Mhm.
So I think there's just a balance with that, like being, using some comedy without putting people
Yeah.
down or being like, us versus them.
I
Like,
will say, I think you may have been something of an outlier in, first of all, the ability to command a funny presence, but then to be able to do it in a way that not only the kids received it well, but also the teacher received it. And that's got to be like a one out of 100 wannabe, funny guys. You were actually like a good faith, good spirited.
yeah, I never thought of it that way. Like in the moment, I
Hmm.
never felt like, oh wow, I'm doing a good job of this thing.
All right.
Just looking back, and it's subtle. Like I just had a little bit of that, like, and it was really a crutch. I was nervous. I was nervous to speak in class.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when I got that internship at the Orlando Magic, I remember being asked to present something to like my team in a meeting of like 8 people who I'd spent all day with, and everything was fine. And then as soon as it was my turn to like just present what we were going to do with the next game, I was, super shaky and stuff.
Hmm.
And so I just needed a little like, oh man, I'm glad you're not speaking. Oh, okay. I kind of get over something. So um, it was definitely something I've worked on or needed to be aware of. It
Hmm.
wasn't something that was like just some natural skill. Like I kind of worked at it.
Yeah.
I still work at getting nervous and breathing and walking through like
Mm.
certain times I presented to large audiences or interviewed live. Oh my gosh. Um,
So what are some of your techniques that you use to be able to calm your nerves? I know you mentioned the breathing. What's kind of another thing that you do?
um, one thing I do, the breathing is kind of right in the moment. Like you kind of catch yourself. Like you never want to jog up on stage and kind of
Hmm.
lose your breath and kind of get there
Oh yeah.
because then you're already behind the 8 ball.
Hmm.
Like take a note, take a beat, take a step, fix your notes, breathe, say one thing, take a breath. Like you almost got to like
Mm.
start on the right pace because if
Yeah.
you start fast and you're nervous, you feel like do I sound nervous? So taking your time to start. But one thing I remember eventually I got a full-time job with the Orlando Magic, and I was often really involved with interns. I would have 3 or 4 interns reporting to me. I even helped in the interviews, and the head of HR would bring me in to do some like um, kind of some lunch and learns, teaching people. And one of the things I remember teaching because I had done it is on the way to any interview. I think that kind of goes in line with on the way to like a public speaking event. I would listen to a song that I love to sing, and I think that was it. Really does 2 things. One, it puts you in a positive mood, right? It's the
Hmm.
endorphins hit, and you're in a good mood.
Hmm.
You stop thinking so much, but it also, I think, physiologically opens up your chest and your
Hmm.
vocal cords. And we've all, I don't know, I'm a sing in the shower kind of guy. I'm not like a
Hmm.
singer, but when sometimes you sound good, sometimes you don't. You ever feel like a song comes on or karaoke, like I'm gonna crush this, and then sometimes it's like it's there, or
Or you're
sometimes it's
doing the
not.
karaoke and you're like, "Oh, I'm killing this right now," and then you watch the playback and you're like, "Oh my goodness, what
Yeah,
happened?"
but it typically like if you are like a mediocre singer, I'll call myself a mediocre singer, and not professional and not somebody who can't carry a tune.
Hmm.
I'm amazed sometimes I sing and sounds pretty good.
Hmm.
Sometimes I can't, and it's all about breath. Like when I realize, it's because I'm singing up here and I don't have my breath.
Hmm.
Versus that big coming from the chest diaphragm
Right.
thing that I don't know a lot about. But I think if you're nervous going into an interview, going into a first date, going into a meeting somebody, going into speaking in class or presenting, um, I really recommend that singing in the car on the way there thing because I think it has the mental relaxation and happiness,
Hmm.
and then physically just you never want to the first words out of your mouth that morning to be when you're talking to somebody. Like
Hmm.
get all those
Hmm.
roughness away and
I
drink a lot of
think
water. You see me trying to like drink water, I get dry
yeah.
mouth talking too much.
I think that's such a good point, and I feel like I do remember seeing something about that, and it's so much of what you said where it is, yes, the endorphins are going, you're it's kinda like you're getting blood flowing, you're getting just the actual breath moving, like, and it's similar to like when you wake up in the morning instead of waking up and then trying to get ready for work. If you wake up a little early, you go for a walk. It's that act of doing something that physically exerts your body, not a bunch, but just
Yeah.
enough to get things moving. So that way you are already in a state of action and activeness. And, of course, Newton's law, things that are in motion, it's easier to continue in motion versus kind of coming from, like you said, behind the eight ball. And now you're trying to catch up. You're running up on the stage, or maybe you're just showing up and you've been thinking about whatever you got to deal with. And,
Yeah. Oh, be early. Oh my god.
mhm.
Go get places early. Like, what's the expression? Like, if you're 5 minutes early, you're 10 minutes late.
Oh, yeah.
Like, if you're at an interview, and it's not about like, oh, they're gonna judge you if you're late. It's about just get there and relax, get acclimated,
Hmm.
get take a second to look in the mirror, get a drink of water. But no matter what it is, like whether it's job, date, uh, you know, um, public speaking, but gosh, yeah, if you can get there early. When you're late,
Absolutely.
it's just everything's you get nervous. I'm gonna get to the airport early kind of guy.
Oh,
Like,
same.
why add that extra pressure and that
Mhm.
extra energy that's negative and kind of, just get your heart pumping in the wrong direction
Yeah.
just because you're late.
And you guys, just as a show that we are both avid believers, I got here to set everything up about 30 minutes early. They actually let me in, and then we were done. We literally sat here for like 15, 20 minutes. We were like, man, we're kind of early. We're ahead of time. Jay showed up before I was expecting him to be here. So like it was great. And we were able to just start very lackadaisically and kind of get into it. So it helps out so much when you can make something early.
Yeah. It seems like obvious advice,
Mhm.
but gosh, I knew somebody I worked with at the Orlando Magic. She was late every day.
Mhm.
Every day. And it was like became a running joke. Like she's late again. And her boss had to talk to like our boss, we were kind of equals. Our boss would talk to her and like just set the alarm earlier. And she's like, I did. I'm still late. Like, and it's her brand. I mean, I worked there 20 years ago and I'm still thinking about that.
Uh,
And it didn't affect her performance really, but it affected like perception of her performance. Like,
mhm.
we're all here on time. Why can't you be? So,
Yeah.
so
And it's
it's a silly thing. And I'm like, kind of like, I'm the worst as like a dad. I've actually had to check myself because I'm so annoying to my kids and so annoying to my wife. Like I probably err on the side of like too early and too much. So there's also something to be said for being relaxed and not being so uptight about
mm.
being on time. It's
And
balance, right? Anything is just some balance.
as you mentioned that, like, you have kids. How many kids
Yeah.
do you have?
So I have two. I've got one in law school up at Wake Forest, and then I've got a 9-year-old. So he's in third grade.
Hot dog. So 9 and 18, 19-ish?
No, 9 and 24.
9 and
Yeah, yeah,
24.
yeah.
Oh,
He
okay.
graduated Florida, grad school Florida, now
Mhm.
second year law student. So
Okay.
he's up there.
Awesome, awesome. So and before we get into the family
Yeah, yeah.
dynamics and whatnot, so you had mentioned that you eventually got a full-time job with the Orlando Magic.
Yep.
And does that carry to where you are today?
Yeah, I mean there's a lot of jobs in between there.
Oh,
So
yeah?
but I'll say something interesting. I really, was proud of how I got that job. So
Mhm.
another, life lesson here.
Mm.
When you do an internship, that's the time to bust your ass. Like,
Mm.
it's hard because back then, I did not get paid. It was a free internship,
Mhm.
and you do all the work that no one else wants to do. So it's very easy to fall into that, like, well, I don't have to like work that hard. I'm not getting paid.
Mhm.
I don't have to show up on time because, what are they gonna do? Fire me? I'm here for free. But when you're up against 20 other interns, like when I finished my internship, there were no jobs available. You're not guaranteed a job. In most cases, you're hoping at the best to get a reference that you'll leverage in the future, right? You built some relationship. I went from internship from there over to an internship that was slightly paid at Rollins College in the
Mm.
athletic department. So another internship. But while I was there, uh, pat myself on the back. I worked my butt off. I was nice. I asked people, "Can I help more?" Like you got to be the teacher's pet kind of thing.
Mm.
Um, and then later, when I did work there and we had interns, I would coach some of these interns. Like, it's not fair. We don't get to go to the holiday party, or you know, it's embarrassing to clean up dog slobber on the court during a halftime act. It's like it is. And I appreciate you, and I know it's hard, but be selfish. You're not showing up early, you're not working hard for them, you're doing it for you.
Mm.
Think of any time that you're doing this stuff, it's not that you're, like, giving up your own self-pride or your own dignity for somebody else. It's a selfish act because you want something, and this is your best chance to get it. If you're
Mm.
interning at the Orlando Magic, you probably wanna work in sports, and if you don't do a good job as an intern, you wasted those 3 months or 6 months. Like, we had some interns for a season or for half a season. It's a long time to finish and then not have something to show for it,
Yeah.
right? Beyond the experience, you're there to impress people, and sometimes you got to dig deep, right, to find that energy and effort to work for free or work for cheap or do a job that's we were like in trailers cleaning out old rat infested
Oh,
junk, and it
man.
was like it wasn't the glamour of
Mhm.
Dwight Howard and Grant Hill and all the stuff that was happening on the court.
Yeah.
But I knew somehow innately, like, um, that I had to show up and work harder than the guys next to me. So if a job ever did show up, or if I asked for that reference, they'd give it to
Mhm.
me. So, um, yeah, there were definitely interns that didn't do that. I would remind them, I was coaching them, like, man, you're complaining and you're frustrated, and you're hurting yourself. You're not
Mm.
you're talking bad about other people. I'm like, you're not, man, you're just hurting yourself. And
Yeah.
it's hurting me watching you do it because I take pride in my interns like doing well, and I want to give you a reference, but
Mhm.
um some could turn it around and realize, and others just it was just in them. They just couldn't, I got one guy in mind that, like, man,
Mm.
he just couldn't turn off the pride to, like, do this thankless job for free.
And that's so that you worded it in a very interesting way, I think, in that you said, like, be selfish about it. Don't think about, like, you doing all of this work for free for them. Think about the good it does you. And, like, that perspective shift is so big because I think that a lot of people do think of when they think of the selfish part, they think of it as I'm not getting anything from this, like, and yeah, I am giving all of this, like, labor to someone. So how could you best communicate to someone that is in that position, and you did some of it here, but, like, what helped you to be able to make that perspective shift? What did you say in your own mind to make it
Yeah.
so that you were not falling into the same trap that you saw countless other interns in?
Um, yeah, I don't remember really going through a shift.
Mhm.
Like, I think that I remember one of the strength and conditioning coach at Florida State one time told me, he's like, "Jay, you've got a servant's attitude." And I was, like, pissed. I was like, "Man, what an insult, right? What did you just call me a servant? Like, I'm a leader. I'm an executive. I'm just not there yet." But I remember it. It was, like, in passing in the gym. I was helping
Mhm.
out with baseball team, doing some weightlifting. But he saw that in me, and so I guess that was already there. I didn't strive to have a servant's attitude, but
Mhm.
what he meant was I was willing to work hard, and I was willing to do things that weren't glamorous, um, and I just knew that I wanted something, and that was to get a good job and to have a good career and all these things, and so I don't remember a shift, but I do remember when that landed, and I had to think and decide that it was a compliment. Like, I had to learn, like, what part of that that feedback was
Right.
positive that I can build on and not take it as like, "Oh, man, I'm always gonna be an underling," right?
Mm.
Like, a servant's attitude he didn't say, "Jay, you're fit to serve others."
Mhm.
He said, "You have an attitude of service," right? And that's a positive thing. Like, you want that in any role. You want that for executives and for spouses, and you want people who are willing to give. And when I am failing as a husband, or I recognize I did something that wasn't great as a father,
Mhm.
I still use that word internally about be
Mhm.
selfish, right? Like, if there's you know, in marriage, there's ups and downs of, like, the workload, right? The
Mhm.
cleaning the dishes
Absolutely.
and who's doing this and who's doing that. And there's times where you feel like I'm doing more than them, and there's times that, like, oh man, they're doing great because I've got this thing at work. Um, and I still use that word selfish. Like, yeah, I'm taking on more of the workload, and yeah, that's like, man, I want to be angry about this. But I realized what I really want is my partner to be, um, happy and
Mm,
relaxed. And I know the best way to help her get there is by me doing this extra work or whatever. So I'm going to do it for myself because I know the outcome is going to be like that happier marriage, that happier moments and stuff. And
mm,
so I'm lucky that I do have a very happy marriage and a happy house. But in those moments when I feel the inequity or man, I
mhm.
got to do this again. Like it's not my turn to do the dishes. Uh, I still think of what do I get out of it? And I don't know if that's the best advice, like to always be selfish,
Mhm,
but at least attach the thing you're doing that you don't want to be doing. And in turn, it's like working for free or, you know, cleaning out a old empty trailer. It's like this isn't sports marketing. This is, manual labor.
mm,
Um, but just yeah, can you attach the outcome you're going for to that moment? Because these are moments, right? This
right.
is a difficult moment I'm going through.
Mhm,
Um, that is going to lead me to an outcome that has is going to last for many moments.
mhm.
And so I like the word selfish. Like I'm doing it for something that I want. It's a
Yeah.
means to an end.
Yeah, I think that's good, and I think the use of selfish, people often think of it in very almost purely negative connotations,
Mhm.
and in a lot of instances, it can be, but also I think that kind of comes down to, something like the spirit of the person, like, does this person have a natural bent towards positivity or
Mm.
negativity?
Mhm.
And so for you as a person that kind of leans towards the more kind of goofball side or like lighthearted or positive, like just these uh sorry. I started think because I think about things involving spirituality and in the universe. Some people would
Yeah.
say that like your frequency is a higher frequency
Mm.
for a lack of better words.
Yeah.
But versus a person that goes and they take a selfish mindset, but they have a spirit of negativity around it, they could act on that selfishness or they could have like, oh, I'm going to do this thing for me. And that could build up, I guess, kind of those responses that some of those other interns had. So I guess maybe a part of it would also even be understanding your natural bent and then like for you selfish works really good for you because of your natural proclivity and then figuring out for a person if you maybe have a more negative bent how can you be more positive and adjust that aspect and then look at something as selfish.
Yeah. I think it's a good way to look at it. And I don't think people have to look in the mirror and say, am I positive or negative? And therefore it's one or the other. Right? We have moments where we're being more positive or negative and you know, waves of time where you're feeling more positive and uplifting versus down. And so I think selfish, maybe it's a way of framing it that you're doing something that's for your own self benefit
Hmm.
and self worth and mental and emotional health and um self esteem. Like you're trying to build yourself up, but you're also not trying to put others down. Like
Hmm.
often the term selfish means I have it, which means you don't. Right?
Hmm.
Like you're not. We teach kids to not be selfish, but also to stand up for yourself. And they've got to learn that balance. Like, when is it
Right.
that you're willing to play a game you don't want to play because it's good for the group, but also stand up and say, you know what, guys, I don't want to play this game anymore. Let's do this other thing, um, which is not selfish in a bad way. It's you know standing up for yourself. So
Hmm.
I think in those examples, the internships and whatnot, you're not out to get the other interns, put
Hmm.
them down so that you're above, like, "I'm being selfish. I always take the good jobs," or, you know, "I
Hmm.
I brag about my thing and don't include them." That's probably the negative side of selfish, but just I think motivating what you're doing to, get to your goals.
Yeah. So I have to bring it up because there's been just sprinkles and hints and pieces of it that make me wonder, and just the natural audience that I typically tend to have, I think they'd be curious as well. So between the person that you had that said you have a servant's heart, and between your natural proclivities and whatnot, and even the way that you described like your role as a husband, um just a lot of this language that stands out to me from a Christian perspective. Did you have roots in Christian? Were your parents that? Did you have some type of history in there?
We were like Easter and Christmas kind of church people, like
Mm.
played on the church softball team. And
Okay.
I went to the church camps because they had the coolest water ski camp.
Mhm.
So we were like around the church, but um, it wasn't a it wasn't like a main focus of like my parents' parenting.
Mhm.
Right? It wasn't do good because it's in the Bible or whatever. It wasn't part of our language often.
Mhm.
Not to say that spirituality wasn't,
Mhm.
but I'd say organized religion.
Yeah.
We were loosely associated with a Presbyterian church, which is a pretty sort of not hardcore. Like we again, super I was like super happy to go on the youth trip down to Disneyland and like be
Right.
part of it. Um, but I think that mostly what my parents taught me, um, right and wrong was you just did it because it's right and wrong. Like we didn't have like the backing of the Bible, the backing of any religion specifically.
Mhm.
They just really try to teach good values. And my spirituality I really got from my dad and my family was really a lot about just nature.
Mhm.
Like the place where I'm calm and peaceful and not overthinking things and not whatever is when I'm at the beach,
Yeah.
when I'm skiing, when I'm on a hike. Like those are my happiest and most zen moments.
Mhm.
Um, and so I think that that's kind of my background. So, the language maybe didn't come directly from a minister or a rabbi, but I think it comes from, just goodness and good people.
Mhm.
In my readings, I've read different kind of spiritual books and some that are all over the place, but um, yeah. So
Yeah.
not specifically a Christian values, but probably similar.
Mhm. Yeah, and the part where, you explained the part with, where he said, "Oh, you have a servant's heart."
Yeah.
And I know that when I look at it from a Christian perspective, I hear that and I'm like, "Oh, they're saying like, oh, you like to go the extra mile." And then hearing like your response to that, I'm like, "Huh." So that person saying that probably was a Christian in some regard. And
He was. Yeah, I remember he
mhm.
was. And I have some thoughts on that, but I'll let you finish.
And so like the fact that he said that, I was able to kind of extrapolate where that kind of language comes
Mhm,
from, but then also the way it was received made me understand that, okay, so there is, as you mentioned, like there is a natural proclivity to it because of the values espoused, but maybe because of the culture that was around with religion at that time, the Christian church, depending on different experiences, there's sort of a visceral reaction that comes up with, especially with, because so much of Christian language can sound very kind of haughty and like ew,
mhm.
um, just like at a moment's glance
Mhm.
without being enmeshed in the culture of it. But you said you had some thoughts. I'm curious.
Well, now that you kept talking, I have a different angle I want to talk about. But
Okay.
I think what my father taught me most was about um, inclusivity
Hmm.
and respect for others.
Hmm.
So I kind of early on felt like I didn't want to attach myself to any religion or any thought system, any belief system that was exclusive.
Hmm.
And that's kind of what I thought it meant, what it had to mean. If I'm in this church, I'm telling you that everybody else is wrong.
Hmm.
And my family, we're very much global citizens. We travel the world. We really value experience and travel. I have an aunt and uncle who spent 20 plus years on a yacht to remote islands in parts of the world. And throughout my family, my parents just got back from 6 weeks in Northern Europe. I just got back from a little town north of Montreal. So
Oh, dope.
like so you sort of can't spend time in the world seeing all these different people
Hmm.
and taking little bits of culture and food and ideas. It's just it's against every fiber in my dad's being, every fiber in my being. I hope I pass that on to my kids,
Hmm.
that I would never tell somebody else that they're wrong for their beliefs.
Yeah.
And so that's where I've sort of liked my own sort of path of like, I'm going to take a little bit from everybody
Hmm.
and be open and fair to everybody,
Yeah.
and I'm never gonna allow somebody to be, like, forceful on
Mhm.
me. And that goes sort of like, I mean, that kinda carries you through to issues of race and equity across different things and religion, and so I think that's kind of probably as much as I really talk about or think about it is just
Mhm.
like, I am totally cool with everybody's doing their own religion. I would never
Mhm.
feel bad about anybody doing something different from me or different from each other. And I just hope like that's what I always hope is like that other people have that same feeling. Like,
Yeah.
you know, there's something about the human experience where we do look for something more
Mhm.
and we just call it different things. I kind of call it Mother Nature. Somebody else calls it God. Somebody else calls it, by lots of different names. But whether it's cave drawings or, it's like this has been going on for a long time in lots of different parts of the world.
Yeah.
So there's something that something about the human brain and spirit and body that we do attach names to these things and talk
Mhm.
about it differently. And I think it's all groovy. Like it's all good.
Yeah.
Um, except for when you start killing each other. Like not
Yeah.
groovy, not cool. So how do you be open and to people, but also like
Mhm.
as long as they allow me to be myself
Yeah.
and my group or my people, my family.
Mhm.
Um, yeah. So
No, I think I agree so much, and I think, I spent a lot of years myself navigating, trying to figure out, like, why the heck are so many people this thing, but these people believe this, and that people believe that, and then these contradictions, and, like, just all the different things that go on, and then also, like you said, like, there seems to be this exclusivity in it, and
yeah.
then, like, this is just my portion in it, where eventually I got to a place where if you do enough studying and researching and questioning and whatnot, you get to a place where you're just like, well, okay, so many people have, even within, for we'll say Christianity, the same singular topic, you might have three different scholars who have three different bends of the exact same issue. So now, if each of those scholars would now say the other two are wrong and therefore question certain things about their faith, but all of them equally feel as passionate about this singular thing, if that extrapolates out to the tens of thousands of slight variations that people look at things through, then that's a ends up being a very small set that you can have within there, within your purview of people that you can like decently interact with if you have this dogmatic attitude about it. And I think
Hmm.
that's where a lot of religion was, and that like big backlash. I know for me personally, I spent like 10, 15 years just kind of being away from anything religious because I'm just like, ugh, I don't like how those people do it. Those people are gross over there, da 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 da. And then at a certain point, I realized like, okay, well, even though these like 30 people were gross that I can think of, there were also like 8 people or 12 people that were incredible people. And so, what is their version of how they go and look at it and how they utilize it? And I think the biggest thing you see is that the people that you think of as the gross ones are the ones that go and they are like dogmatic and so aggressive about
Hmm.
pushing like just the letter of the law of their belief versus the people that are the most attractive with it are the people that don't make it about the laws and the rules, but they make it about the spirit of treatment and conduct towards each other.
Hmm.
And then they just attribute the best of their practices towards the good things that they've learned. And
Yeah.
I think when I look at it, I can say, okay, so if I have X number of beliefs, how can I treat someone in such a way that it is attractive enough that they are interested to then learn more instead of bashing their head about it?
Yeah.
Um, which is not even supported by the text in taking that approach. So that's just my bend on it real quick.
Yeah, and I think that it's really about this listening and caring about people. Like, different religions drive people to different sort of activities, and that's also okay. Like, if somebody, I've had very close friends who are very religious, and they're on a journey to learn more and recruit or whatever. And I'm like, that's great. Like, let's have these conversations. I'm like, I've always been open to that, but I'm just not going to exclude the other friends I have, the other
Mhm.
people I've met around the world, my own family, right? Like, gosh,
Mhm.
it's so sad if somebody believes something that forces them to push away a family member or somebody that they could otherwise relate to.
Mhm.
Just find a common ground or just accept that we're going to be a little different on something, and um, that's what's, I think, a good way to look at it. But
Yeah. Like even the idea of, for example, in the Christian world, I give you,
yeah,
there are some that have very strict like issues when it comes to things like Christmas, Thanksgiving, all kind of the major holidays. And one look at it is that, Christmas is, from the religious perspective, it's celebrating Jesus' birthday. But from the world perspective, it's kind of Santa Claus, reindeer, family time, dinners, meals, happy time together, lights, all these different things.
yeah,
And person that is of that like of the very hardcore religious belief is like, I want nothing to do with all that stuff, to the point where they like don't go to the family dinners, they don't go to any of the meetings, they don't engage with people. If they see carolers, they're like, "Ah, you darn carolers singing these songs." And like, I think I understand like where they come from with it, because for them it's like taking what's supposed to be about something and making it about something else. But I do think that there is that thing of like, if you can't even, like you said, engage with your family at this time where you're getting this whole mass of family together
hmm,
where they otherwise wouldn't have that time, they're given it because companies acknowledge it. And so this is your opportunity, and you wouldn't do it just because of your own personal convictions about it. That is the negative version of that selfish, as we were discussing
yeah.
earlier.
And honestly, maybe that's also okay. Like if that's what drives their heart, like to be what we might consider two in one direction or not enough in the other direction. How do we just sort of understand that person, and that's their deal. That's okay.
Yeah, I would
But
say.
we can also feel empathy and sadness, like, "Oh, man, it's really too bad that person can't be with their family. Oh, it's really too bad that that person's not able to enjoy or express themselves openly in this environment or that." So,
Mhm,
have empathy and just try to understand
yeah.
people.
So you said that as you have your kids and you consider like your roles and whatnot. So when you speak on things like roles and ways of bringing up kids, what do you consider your role as a husband and as a father to look like and be?
Yeah, it's, man, it's a lot. It's a big role. Like, it's, both of those roles are giant roles. Um, it's my favorite role as a father. Like,
Mhm.
that's the thing that I always knew I wanted to be a father. And I think that's because I had a good father. Like I was like,
Mm.
I kind of wanted to at least like be as good a dad as he was, right? And uh, what is my role? I think you're a role model. So a lot of it's just try to live a good life and let them see that.
Mhm.
A lot of it's about protecting, and a lot of it's about encouraging. To me, it's a lot about opportunities, right? Give them a chance to be on a sports team. Give them a chance to travel. Give them a chance to try new things.
Mhm.
If you have the means to do those things, great. If not, there's other ways to find. Give them opportunities just to see above their yard, right? See outside of
Right.
their town. See outside of just their school. Um, but I just love being a parent, being a dad. Um,
What do you think resonated so much with you from your father's execution of it that made you so excited to take it on for yourself?
um, you know, I think that it's like in the world, you run across, you're going to meet so many people. You're going to have friends, you're going to have teachers, you're going to have spouses and girlfriends, boyfriends, you're going to have bosses. And I was like, man, I just need to know that there's one person, at least
Mm.
one. It's nice if you have more than one. But for me, I know there's one person that no matter what, he's got my back and my support and my love. Both
Mhm.
he's gonna love me, I'm gonna love him back. Like, I just need to know that I've got that on the planet. So whatever else is going on in the world, I at least have, I call it a rock, or that relationship is so
Mhm.
valuable to me. Um, and so it can, like, all other noise in the world, at least I have, like, that's an important bond, right?
Mhm.
It's an important, just part of my life is that relationship. And
Mhm.
I live, my dad lives in Oregon, I live in Florida. So it's, I don't have it like going to lunch every day and, "Hey, come on over and help me fix the truck." I kinda never have. We've Ever since I went to college, we've lived far apart.
Mhm.
But we visit and we talk, and that's important. So I think that that's what I tell my son. Like, one of my most important values is honesty. Like, just tell the truth.
Yeah.
Like, you will never get in trouble with me if you made a mistake if you're truthful about it. Like, to some extent, right?
Right.
Um, but
Not the worst trouble
but
you could get
the
into.
most trouble you'll get in is lying. And I
Yeah.
said, I just need to know, like, people are gonna lie to me on TV, people are gonna lie to me in the media and politics, and people are gonna maybe mislead me in sales or in work. But I gotta know that this kid
Mhm.
knows that I am there for him 100%, and that no matter what he says, the love's not gonna break.
Mhm.
It's more than 100%. It's just the most solid thing. And when I do something that offends him or hurts his feelings, or I let him down, that was a mistake, and that's okay. And he's learned to forgive me for not being a perfect dad all the time or a perfect person all the time. Like, I'm trying to teach him that, like, I'm a human and I'm doing my best. We all are. Um, but the love and that honesty and that truth is, like, I need that relationship more than anything. Um, and so that's kind of a father to son, or new father down to new
Mm.
son, trying to pass that along.
Absolutely, absolutely. And yeah, that ability to represent that rock
Mhm.
and to be that, how do you think that, like, how did that shape the way that, do you think that affected how you went after your different things in terms of postgraduate internships, da 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 da? Like, did you consult your father a lot during those time periods?
Not much. My dad's a professional, he's an engineer, he's retired now. Always had a good job, always a hard worker, really valued work, but he isn't an entrepreneur. He
Mhm.
never strived to be the boss, never owned his own company and those kind of things. And if anything, my career has been on my own.
Mm.
So, like, I've got the love and support, but not necessarily like the guidance, right?
Mm.
Like, some people go into the family business, or they
Mhm.
get some seed money from dad to start the company.
Mm.
He was never there as a as a like, tactically helping my career.
Mhm.
But always there, just undying support. Like, always proud of whatever,
Mhm.
always rooting for me. And that's such a key thing, right?
Right.
You find the people in the world that root for you,
Mhm.
and you just like, nurture that. Like,
Mhm.
that's what I want my kids to know. Like, I'm always rooting for you. Like, never mad about a failure, never mad about a mistake, never mad. I'm just here. I'm rooting for you. And when you win, I'm gonna cheer loud. And when you don't, I'm gonna give you hugs. And if you want guidance, I'll give it to you. If you want some time alone, I'll, like, just so I think that's what my dad did give me, was solid work ethic. Like, I always knew I was going to college because he did. I always knew I'd have a full time job and work hard. So he definitely passed down some of those, like, work values.
Right.
But he was never like, "Hey, you should do this internship or this major," or,
Mm.
have you turned in this paper on time? Like, It was, like, kind of
Hmm.
on my own.
Mhm.
Um, he put himself through school. I kind of put myself through school, and uh, but yeah, so more of a support system than like a teacher.
So your son, he's well, you said he was 24, right?
Yeah.
So I'm very curious to know this. So, for example, when your father went to school and he put himself through, that was one economy. When you went to school and put yourself through, a whole different economy as well. The economy of 2023. How was navigating that for your son? Because his adventure started 6 years ago in there.
Yeah.
How did you find did he have the same capacity to be able to put himself through in the same way that the 2 of you did? Or did you find that you both had to or that you had to, you and your wife had to step in and help out with that?
Yeah, it's a good observation that different time and place, right?
Mhm.
Different people, different stages in our lives. My dad was a younger dad. I'm an older dad,
Mm.
and a lot of factors in place. So what my older son did is just work super hard and do great in school.
Mhm.
So he went to Florida on the Bright Future Scholarship. It's free. Like
Mhm.
I don't know if not, like I realize I talked to a lot of parents because I have a third grader.
Mhm.
They don't even know about Bright Futures. Like in Florida, the schools are free. Like if you just do well enough in school,
Mhm.
you go to Florida, Florida State, not Miami because it's private, right? But the
Right.
Florida schools, UCF, the junior colleges, and as long as you achieve a certain level of academic standard,
Mhm.
like the grade point average, the tests scores, and some other requirements,
Right.
it's free. So our thought was give him the freedom to focus on school and do well, and
Mhm.
he's really putting himself through school academically.
Mm.
Um, Now that doesn't pay like for the frat and
Right.
and new shoes, right? But my wife and
100%.
I are fortunate enough to have enough wealth to be able to afford that,
Mhm.
right? So we can pay for those things, and we feel good about giving him the freedom to focus on his education and his networking and his fun.
Mhm.
Like you're gonna have a long life of working those 4, 5, 6, 7 years, including law school. It's hard work, and if you can do that, but also have so much fun
Yeah.
and build the network and not have to take a bunch of part-time jobs and things, that's
Mhm.
okay. Now, there are times where my wife and I differ a little bit on that subject, like, "I think you should have a job and no, let him rest." Like,
Mhm.
we debate that,
Yeah.
I think there's merit in sort of,
Who
ha
usually takes what side of what?
I'm more in the line of, like, summer job, put yourself through
Okay.
school,
Makes sense, yeah.
because I think that it gives you a lot of pride when you have skin in the game, like
Mhm.
you've earned it yourself. And my wife's teaching to me is that, but isn't it nice for him to be able to focus on, like for me, I mentioned, I
Mhm.
took every class minimum because I knew what it cost to take these classes. Like I'm getting out of here in exactly 4 years. I'm not wasting money on extra credits.
Yeah.
Um, is it nice to be able to take a few extra classes, drop a class because it's not going well, take on a study abroad in Ireland for a summer? Yeah,
Right.
it's kind of like, is it really great academically? No, but it's fun, dude. Live in Dublin for a summer. So, and we're fortunate to have the means to do that, right? So, with some sacrifice, it's not like we're throwaway money where it's like a no brainer,
Right.
but we feel good as parents, making some sacrifices to give our kids those opportunities
Mhm.
while also making sure that they're not squandering them, right? So,
Yeah.
second, that the grades aren't there or too much partying or whatever, you just hope that you've given them enough values and guidance and role models that they are going to take advantage of the time to get an
Mhm.
education and have fun.
Yeah.
Like it's just balance, right? We all know kids who studied so hard, but they never got out and met people. And we all know people
Mhm.
who studied so hard and dropped out in a year and a half.
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
and so trying to teach that balance starts really early.
Mhm.
And then just giving them enough support, but also giving them enough freedom to do it on their own. So
Mhm.
yeah.
And how do you find that when it comes to big decisions involving the particular kid, how do you find that communication to be with that particular person that you're talking with, whether it's talking with the mother or talking with the parents that maybe have a perspective or siblings if either of you have
Hmm.
siblings to contribute to the conversation. How does that usually play into like how you affect your child's upbringing?
So my older son is my stepson,
Mhm.
and I came into his life and he came into mine when he was around 12 years old.
Mhm.
So a lot of that communication patterns and parenting were sort of established. I kind of came in late, right?
Mm.
And so I was definitely adding value, but I was, second in command.
Mm.
And so to this day, my older son is gonna lean more on mom, and she's if we have a disagreement, she wins, right? She's kind of the
Mm.
she had a 12-year head start building that relationship. And I was raised with a stepmom and two step siblings, so I really
Mm,
understand that dynamic, right?
mm.
I mentioned my dad a lot more than I mentioned my mom, right? Or
Right.
my stepmom. Huge parts of my life, but my dad was the one that like when it came down, my brother and sister would
Mhm.
go to mom and I would go to dad. It's the
Yeah.
little and that's a really challenging thing over time. There are challenges that present themselves because of uh, that sort of divided allegiance, you know.
Mhm. Absolutely.
And I think it's different if a step parent comes into their life when they're 2 versus 12 versus 18, right?
Yeah.
There's those are differences, and we did some talking to people and reading some books and learning things, but every family's different, and our son together came along while he was still in the house, and so how are we treating them fairly? And to this day, home for Christmas, you got a 24-year-old and 9-year-old. They have different needs, and really trying to make sure and trying to give all the fuel we can for their relationship to grow. We know how important that you know
Mhm.
to support that relationship. It's not as natural when they didn't grow up in the same house their whole lives.
Yeah.
So they love each other, they adore each other, which is awesome.
Mm.
But that takes effort. Like you're conscious of that. You're conscious of
Definitely.
you don't just take for granted that other siblings they'll love each other when they're adults. Like how do you
Mm.
build more relationships? How do we while we still can with the older boy
Yeah.
get him on family trips and stuff.
Which
Yeah,
I'm curious. So, what I find is that as a 24-year-old, he's a little bit younger than me in my time, but still similar enough that I know that late 90s, we very much like between the 90s, early 2000s ish, we found it important to interact a lot with siblings and whatnot. But I do find that the kids that are more that kind of 2012 and plus age are very much more worried about just the game, any people that's playing those games. So how have you seen that your sons have been able to connect
hmm
and kind of bridge that age gap in there.
yeah,
Because like I said, with my generation, like we were on the way there. We were getting internet and getting the social medias,
yeah.
but the new generation is just iPad at the age of 7, 4.
You see
Um,
3-month-olds like staring at iPads. You really, I mean, you do, and
so what's the sauce on that, man?
um, yeah. My older boy was born in '99, so he's kind of that generation.
Mhm.
Then the young guy in 2014. So um, and I've worked. We kind of stopped at my sports time, but after a couple more sports jobs, I've worked in tech. I've worked for social media companies, and so I have this really deep understanding of what we do as technology companies to
Mhm.
get people to see our ads and to get people to view our content.
Right.
So I sort of know the evil behind the curtain. Um,
Oh man, that might have to be a whole nother episode we get you on to talk
well,
about
and
just
there's some great documentaries about it too. Like,
yeah.
and so if I do see my son playing, one of these like the little guy playing a game that's like a Candy Crush kind of game,
Mhm.
which he doesn't play, but there's a couple of those games that'll sneak up and he's playing them. I just try to teach him that like you're not really playing a game. You're just you're becoming the product. Like all you're doing is viewing ads,
Hmm.
and that let's go sideways a little bit and talk about that. So these games are they change your outcome based on your engagement. So if they
Mhm.
feel you losing too much and they think the algorithm's teaching them that you're about to leave, they make the game easier. And if
Hmm.
the game's too easy and you're about to leave, they make it harder. And so you're not really competing. You're just becoming an eyeball that they can sell to the advertisers, right?
Hmm.
Oh, he's probably going to leave. Oh, let's make this next level super hard. But if he watches this ad, he gets the sword or the token that he needs to pass it, right? So what I do as a parent is try to find games that are actually playing a game because I love sport. I love games. I love what it does for my son to give him a break from the mental stress of school and friends and everything else. So I like gaming. Like I've worked kind of peripherally in the gaming industry. Um, but my son plays FIFA, or now it's EAFC.
Mhm.
He plays Madden. He plays, these games that he's learning about the sport. He's actually a better soccer player at some level
Mhm.
because he understands formations. And we watch real soccer. We go to Orlando City games.
Mm.
He plays club soccer. So play FIFA. Right now, this is an extension of like real life,
Yeah.
right? As opposed to, we don't do shooter games. We don't do those habit forming, addictive, just
Mm.
like you get lost and don't realize 2 hours went by.
Yeah.
So I think that's what, let's not make should kids be on phones a black and white discussion.
Mhm.
There's gray area. There's educational materials. There's this and that, but there's also, even within gaming, should kids play games? Well, at least turn off communication with non-friends.
Right.
Like the first thing, for some reason, the ugliest hate speech in the world lives on these game servers. Like,
Truly, truly.
so strange. Um, bless you.
Thank you.
But so, my son has a friend, one of my friend's sons who lives in Colorado. They see each other about twice a year, and they're good friends. They can hop on and play Rocket League together,
Mhm.
and it's true engagement. It's true. It's a pen pal of this generation. They
Right.
can get their headphones on, play Rocket League. I hear him having a blast up there, and he's building that relationship with this friend in Colorado, a couple years older, only going to see him a couple times a year, but what a blessing for that game and that interaction to be there for him.
Right.
And, there's still time limits, and sometimes I'm at dinner with my wife and we want to really just enjoy time, and it's the three of us, and the kid could be on the phone doing one of those silly Flappy Bird games, and that's okay too, because it's mindless. It's not everything's educational.
Mhm.
It's maybe in a little bad for him, but it opened up time for my wife and I to connect and have a dinner, So it's balance, man. I'll say that over and over. It's just like,
Yeah.
it's moderation. It's being aware of it. Sometimes sometimes I see my son all stressed out. My wife's stressed out. I'm like, oh, what game were you playing? Like, no kidding, you're stressed out. Things like, take a break. Let's go kick the soccer ball around.
Oh, man. So, man, yeah, you're right. We did, kinda stop at the sports thing, and then we dived in. And just time-wise, I see that we are kind of coming up right on that 2 o'clock ish. So I do want to be respectful of your time, but we'll definitely have to get you back on at a point in the future, man. Cover that
Yeah,
second
we
whole
finished
portion in there.
Q1 of my
All
life. I'm
right.
just gonna assume I'm gonna live to 100 years. We really did. When I worked for the Magic, I was there till I was like 28 or something. So we kind of covered that.
Hot dog.
I went from there to work for the Cavaliers, and
Mm.
I was there for LeBron's rookie year. So I took that
Oh,
job. So
man.
that's the next phase.
Oh, man, you
But then I
guys.
came back to Orlando and started working in tech, and that's what I'm doing now, is working with startups and in tech. So
Hot dog. Oh yeah, we'll definitely have to go deep on that as well.
awesome.
At this point, I do want to go ahead. We'll go into some of the closing up segments here.
Yeah.
So, from this conversation here, what are 3 things of everything that we've discussed that you really want the audience listener to be able to take, to be able to utilize in their own lives?
Um, can I define the audience? Like, who are we talking to? Give me
Uh,
give me a persona. I'm a marketing guy, so
16 to 65, with the vast majority of that being 25 to 44, about 32%, with
yeah.
about 18% 16 to 24, and then the other, what, 20 some odd percent in the older category.
So I don't want to dwell too much on that, like, high school, college experience, but I think it's, you know, I'm 50 and I'm
Mhm.
still considering my next career move, and the trajectory, and trying to be better at the job I have, and all these things. So, um, 3 things I would share that I think you helped me realize is that, um, I I like this notion of being selfish. When
Mm.
things are hard, when things aren't fair, can you find within that experience, within that moment, why you're doing it, right? Whether it's a parenting thing, a spouse situation, or oftentimes we're talking about in the workplace.
Mm.
Like, am I doing this because I'm going to benefit, right? Sometimes it's a job you hate, but man, putting food on the table, and I've got a vacation coming up, and you can remind yourself of that. Now, good selfishness, good self awareness, good self mental health. If it's a job that is damaging you and hard for you, and it's you're not sleeping and it's too stressful, just putting food on the table is not enough. Like you should explore a job change. Like the balance of selfishness. You're not getting enough for yourself out of that role. But I do think, like, especially early on, you're trying to prove yourself. You're trying to get a letter of recommendation out of an internship. Is kind of a really easy one to latch onto. Like, the only one you hurt yourself by blowing up in the exit interview is you. Like, they're not going to change the company because that intern, told us how unfair it was. The company's going to move on, right? You might owe it to yourself to give a little positive feedback or some negative feedback about an individual, but think about the lasting impact it's going to have on your legacy during that time there, right? And I think that goes for the 45-year-old who's going to quit his job and he wants to storm out and flip the table over versus, like, can you find some ability to, like, resign, give the 2 weeks notice, give the feedback to human resources if you need to, but are you really helping or hurting yourself if you overreact or act unprofessional or cross some lines you shouldn't cross? Was
That's
that
so good.
was that one? I gotta have three. Um, I'll tell you another one that you really reminded me of is I reached out to somebody the other day that I'd worked with many years ago because I wanted some advice on something. And the reason I reached out to her is because she was a supporter of mine. Like, I knew that the advice that she's going to give me is going to come from a place of, like, I like this guy. I root for this guy. Hey, I think that she'll find the time for me. She's an executive coach, right? Um, but I also know that this is somebody that I trust to, like, act in my best interest. So that's a similar feeling I have with my dad. Like, I know that my dad is rooting for me, he's behind me, and this is the right person to go to for whether it's advice or just to vent or just I need a hug, because I know they've got your back. So maybe we put that into the category of, like, if you have people in your life that support you and like you. I mean, it doesn't have to be that they're huge cheerleaders, but, like, they know you, they appreciate you. Like, those are the people, like put as much energy as you can into keeping that relationship, growing that relationship. Give back to that person in the same way they give to you. So
Hmm.
that's my number two.
Awesome. Awesome.
Do we need a number three? What else did we cover? Job, life. I will say that as we talked about my career, it's kind of weird that I was living in Santa Barbara. I moved to Hawaii. I moved to Oregon. I moved to Santa Barbara. I moved to Orlando. I moved to Cleveland. I moved back to Orlando. I like that I did that when I was young. There's part of me that misses having deeper roots along the way. Like,
Hmm.
there's something beautiful about living in the same small town. I have
Hmm.
friends that live in the same small town, and there's great friends, and there's children become friends, and they can have the weekly lunch with grandma and their dad. So that is certainly a path that I have a lot of envy for and appreciation. But I also like that I did take some risks and I did move and I went to a school that I didn't know wasn't on the beach, and I took a risk. I moved to Cleveland and took a job and what that led to and moving back and everything. So I do encourage people to take risks, especially when you can. I think it's easier to do when you're younger,
Hmm.
before you have a family. And so if you can see some of the world, do it.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome. So for the next portion of these
Yeah.
segments, uh, you may, if you have any, ask 1 to 3 questions that you might have for me. Get my perspective on anything, just anything you want.
Yeah. So you've been doing this podcast for a while. You've
Mhm.
had a lot of guests. Um, if I want to be a better father, what advice have you come across along the way? I know you've talked with people different walks of life, but if there's
Mhm.
anything parenting in there, what have you learned, or what advice do you have for me to just help me be a better dad?
Interesting. First question of this nature. Um, I would say something that I got from a gentleman, that he was telling me with his relationship and his father that he's trying to differentiate with his son now is that he wanted so much to improve on the places that he genuinely felt his father lacked.
Mm,
And so that meant being more emotionally intelligent and being able to um, kind of step away from just purely the fatherly role and come into a more like sympathetic, like at your side, not just above you, in front of you kind of place.
mhm,
And really just hearing the full heart of his kid. Um, and so always just keeping that thing of even in times of the most rebellious spirit, um, always make your child's heart feel heard,
mhm.
if nothing else, is probably the biggest thing that I took away from our
That's really good.
interview.
That's really good. My wife's good at reminding me about. She's like, she'll see me sometimes. Yeah, get caught up in the details, and they want to be heard. That's a really
Mm,
and their heart heard. And that's like, what's the emotion? What's the spirit saying? Not just the
right.
throwing peas on the ground. Right? That's really good. Um, because I haven't studied a lot of Christianity,
Mhm,
tell me something that you learned during your spiritual journey
mhm,
that somebody who didn't come in up through the church and doesn't read the Bible and things like,
mhm.
um, teach me something that I can hold on to spiritually that I may not already know.
Absolutely. And man, these are some great questions here. Holy smokes. I would say that if I so my walk with my faith has not been a straight line. I have almost left my church three times or so. I've had falling outs with different people, reconnected. I've almost been ostracized. I've by my community in different places behind the scenes. It hasn't been straight. And the biggest thing that I could give you from that is it's not about the institution. It's not even about the people within the institution. The greatest thing I got from my faith is understanding that there is a God out there, made this beautiful world, the nature, created people, made the differences, allows us to make our own different choices, all of that. And even no matter how much I want to think of myself as a good person in certain ways, I do hurt people. And as much as my hurt hurts some people that they can't come back from, no matter what I do, that same exact God that is so powerful always loves me. Kind of similar, I guess, in the same way that your father is a rock.
Mhm.
You know, I do have a father. Me and my father have a relationship, but knowing that I have my earthly father and then that I have my spiritual father
Mhm.
gives me like a double helping. And to be able to know that I can open this book and for all the flaws that we can see with the way that the people act with this book, the book itself is amazing in what it teaches. And that knowing that father sent his son to die for me, to be able to allow me to learn from that son being Jesus, and to be able to be adopted into that family of that
Mhm.
love. Um, it that is something that everybody has available to them. And it doesn't require, like I said, the institution and the people. It's just seeking that son, seeking to understand what is what is his greatest desire for us? And what I tell people a lot is, man, there's so much good that you as an individual do to so many people, and it probably stands out in a way that they'll remember. but they might not remember the specifics. When I think about what brought me to my faith, it wasn't the people constantly saying, "You need to believe," and da da da.
Mhm.
It was always, like I said, the 8 to 12 people that were incredibly kind, and they were kind in the name of Jesus. And so when I was at my darkest place in life, I thought about, well, let me try out this Jesus thing again. And it's not something that a lot of my family is into, but it's something that gave me a compass. And I think it can give a lot of young men, especially now that so much of things that used to be very simple to navigate have been complicated a lot. It gives us something of a stabilizer, especially when we look at relationships that might fall apart,
Mhm.
girlfriend wise or friend wise. It's just a rock. And so I think the encouragement of that, my father always put me around certain people, and my stepmother, even at the time when we maybe had strained relationships, at a certain
Yep.
point in my life, I'm like, the reason why I really dipped back in was because my stepmom gave me a good experience. And
Mhm.
so maybe it could be something beneficial for your sons. At some point in the future, they might find some connection with it.
Yeah. Uh, Thanks for sharing that. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And did you have any last thought or question at all?
The third one,
You don't have to. It's totally.
yeah, no, well, I think, I kind of forgot. When I met you, we haven't
Hmm.
known each other very long, just a few weeks.
Hmm.
I watched some of your podcasts and
I
thought
appreciate
about
that.
it, and um, wanted to understand like a little bit your perspective. So as you've talked to people and thought about like this evolving sense of men,
Hmm.
masculinity, and things like where are we heading? Like where are we now? Or like what's different? Like how would you define in a couple of sentences?
Yeah.
That could be a whole episode, right? But is there something that's like, are we at some inflection point as a society that something is happening? Like
I
what?
think there's two major points that make me say yes. One is the election of Donald Trump. Two is the high rising of a public figure named Andrew Tate. He was the most Googled man in 2022, I believe it was.
Yeah.
When Donald Trump got elected, flipped everything every logical person thought was possible.
Hmm.
And I think that that shows that there is a change of the hearts of guys where men, by and large, are wanting to see masculinity embodied in some form. I think things like
Hmm.
Me Too and things like Believe All Women and all these things are good in concept, but poor in practice. And that guys feel that and are reflecting that through who they support. Um, and so at this time, I find that masculinity is at a crossroads. Either it can go towards the Donald Trumps and the Andrew Tates, the people that say that they believe in religious figures and da 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 da, or it can go the route of a man of some type of faith who feels a certain type of duty and responsibility that says, well, yes, faith, but also faith that is true faith, not this faith that benefits you selfishly. Um, because I think right now, when you look at figures like Trump or Tate, they both use faith in such a way that it is self serving versus the true use of faith when it's practiced by somebody that really cares about it. It's very self-sacrificing.
Hmm.
It is putting the good of your fellow man vastly ahead of your own, and it is not legitimizing the most self-gratifying parts of your life. It's not using it to be able to sleep with multiple women. It's not using it to receive a bunch of donations to facilitate a lifestyle of luxury.
Right.
It is taking time to do activities that maybe aren't the most profitable. It is having guests on or someone into your home that may not be beneficial or profitable to you, but they need to be heard. And it is giving of yourself to someone that needs it in order for them to be able to be grown up. Um, that otherwise wouldn't have that available. And so I think that's where we're going, is that guys like myself, I would say, and that I'm trying to really, I've met so many awesome men here, and I want to call out more guys to say, hey, like, these young guys out here, they need people to look at. It's
Mhm.
crazy. You look in my church space, and the amount of male leaders is, there's a good amount, but it could use so much more, especially in the middle school age group.
Hmm.
And it's just the replacement rate is not there. There are people that come in, they are with their class for a period, and then when that class is done, that person's done their job for that group of kids. Now the next guy needs to come, but the replacement rate is not there.
Hmm.
We need more guys to pick up that mantle and understand how important it is. The reason why girls are doing so well now, we see college rates are up for them and all that, is because women understand we need to pour into our girls. And I don't think guys of the previous generation, of my generation, have understood that the next generation of men needs the previous generations to be present.
Hmm. It's a lot. It's a lot. It's good.
I did my
I
best to summarize it as
Yeah, one
quickly.
one thing I do wanna share, coming from, like, a tech background,
Mhm,
and I'm a Democrat, and I've always been, and but, like, my friend group, it's half Republican and half Democrat, right?
mhm,
And what I know, like, scientifically
right.
about the world today is that social media and the type of news that we're consuming different from when I was younger. Like
Mhm,
very very different, right? We grew up with three guys on the news telling us this is what happened today.
yeah,
Now there's millions of people telling you this is my opinion of what happened today.
yeah,
And just that simple fact. But as an experiment, I'm a very close friend of mine, big Republican,
mhm,
and we look at each other and we say, if we just swapped phones for a week, we'd probably change our votes in the election. Like if you just look at his feeds
mhm,
and look at my feed and we just switched, like we get such confirmation bias from
mhm,
these social media and news channels. Like if you saw what I saw, bro, there's no way you would ever like this thing,
yeah.
whether it's a topic, a movement or a politician or whatever. And it's like, well, if you saw what I saw every day, because we're not getting our news from news organizations, we're getting our news from advertising platforms
Mhm,
that are for profit, publicly traded. Like it's not their responsibility to educate or inform. It's their responsibility to shareholders to make money.
mhm,
So if you are a certain X and you just engage in the world digitally, right? You get so much. They know who you are and they know what you want to hear. And it feels good. It feels good to see like my guy did something good, their
mhm,
guy did something bad, and so that's
yeah,
that's all you see. So all I encourage people is please have these conversations about movements, about social equity, about
mhm,
politics with people
yeah,
face to face.
mhm,
Because like the internet, this sounds cliche, but it's so true. The internet has us here and here. How
mhm.
big can I get on the screen? Here and here. But you talk to anybody for 5 minutes and you realize we're here and here.
Yeah,
Like we are so close in our understanding of each other and
mhm,
what we want. And if we just listen, and I don't want to sound too cliche, but like if you understand, like, man, this is a person sitting across from me that's as educated as me, who loves their kids as much as me, who wants the world to be a safe place as much as me,
mhm,
and they just think that we're going to get there a different way. Let's work together and we can like
yeah,
find that common ground. And it's really hard to do that in a digital world where we're
mhm,
being fed information
yeah,
that it's not even that it's all misinformation, it's just one side.
mhm,
And say, well, every single news article says the same thing. Yeah, because that's where the advertisers know
mhm,
you'll keep engaging with that platform.
absolutely.
So just go talk to people. There's my big stand on the pulpit or stand on a flip over a trash can, stand up with a bullhorn and say, put the phones down and just talk to people.
I love that. And I think that's so and I think that's why, another reason why I love to
Yeah.
do this kind of thing is that it gives everybody from CEOs of whatever to guys that literally were in prison and hate the government and hate everything that America is, you know?
Yeah.
And I so I love everything that you just said in here. Um, so as a part of our last piece here, this is our absolute last one here. What is something that the audience and I right now can pray for you about that you are either struggling with that you could use encouragement on, or that is something that you would like to get off of your chest?
Mm. I'm sensing this should be deeper than like world peace, or what I want for Christmas. Well, that's big. I mean, I really I don't feel comfortable asking others to do something for me. Like really what I want for people is to find their own peace and to um find space to be relaxed and be forgiving of themselves and others. That's kind of what I want. Like I just want I want peace in the world,
Mhm.
but at the individual, like really localized.
Yeah.
Um uh so so maybe you know what? I'll do this. I'm working with a startup. It's
Mhm.
called Estu, and it's an app that's going to be focused on students. And this is not a plug. Like
Mhm.
I generally believe in the mission of this company, so I want
Mhm.
people to pray for us to find the wisdom to get there. But the idea of the platform and of the company is to help students find balance.
Mhm.
Um, my wife is a senior executive at a big tech company. She also does coaching and on the individual level, both leadership, but at the individual level. Um, and there's billion-dollar industry trying to fix adults,
Right.
right? Help them find balance, help them find emotional and mental health.
Mhm.
What if we could give tools to students when they're in high school and into college to find work-life balance, to find ways to relieve stress, find ways to have a positive relationship with money, whether they have a lot or a little, just understanding work and life and all those things. So, um, don't pray for the success of the company. Pray for the success of that mission. Can we teach young people?
Mhm.
Can we teach people early enough? Because it just gets harder and harder to just find balance. Have goals, work hard, but don't stress yourself out so much that you miss life and the
Mhm.
joy of family and friends and travel and nature.
Absolutely. All right. Let's do it.
All right.
So,
Thanks for having me on.
absolutely. So, well, this is so
Oh, we're gonna pray.
yeah, we're gonna pray.
I'm in.
All right. So, dear Lord and Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day that we have been able to have Jay with us, Lord. Thank you for his willingness and his openness to be able to reschedule, even on an absolute dime of a turn, Lord. Thank you for this amazing conversation we've been able to have. And for everybody that watches this on the playback, we pray that they're able to get something from this. We want to take this time to lift up Jay's mission that he has to be able to empower and to facilitate the betterment of the lives for students. And we just pray that as he works with this startup, Lord, that they will be guided in wisdom to be able to make the best decisions and to be able to stick to what the goal is of making the most impact for the most amount of people, in order to be able to create a more powerful generation that knows how to steward their time, steward their resources, and to handle all the different things that they're made easily available to. And we just pray that they would keep that mission in mind first over all other things, Lord, and that his voice can be heard in this process and in this mission, Lord. We thank you so much for the type of man that he has been able to become, for all the success that he's had thus far. We pray that you would empower him continuing and going forward to be able to live up to all the potential he has within him. We thank you, Lord, for all this that you've done for us. We thank you for all those who have watched us. We give you all these thanks and praise in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Lift me up, send me on my way.
So, you guys, thank you so much for watching this episode. We were so glad to have you. We will absolutely have to have Jay back in order to get his part two. What happened with the Cavaliers that we did not go into much of at all, and all of his tech related portion of his
It's a
career.
cliffhanger.
Yes, you guys, we got to get them. So you guys have a great rest of the day. And I'm going to catch you guys on the next episode of the Inspired Challenge podcast. Take care, everybody.
But
And that's a done deal.